All right, so Disney had their quarterly earnings call recently, and there was a bunch of news on that. But to me, this was more interesting. It was talking about Disney and getting movies released in China, and also stuff to do with their streaming service numbers. And this is one of those things where it's like, I knew all of this, but it's kind of like, it's interesting to hear Bob Chapek, who's in charge over there, actually talk about it out loud, because they tend to be very mum about it. They couch it in interesting, like, CEO language, like executive language. Like, they never call it a place. They call places markets. Like, it's not a place, it's a market. You know, it's the Eastern European market. It's the Chinese market. But so I think it's both, because that's just how CEOs talk, but it also distances them from the fact that they have to be associated with various groups over there. So it says, with Marvel's global juggernaut, Doctor Strange, missing in action in China, Disney CEO Bob Chapek called the situation there, quote, very fluid and very complicated, both from a business standpoint and from a political standpoint. But he noted that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has just crossed the $500 million mark in less than a week, even without China, which hasn't released a Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame in 2019. Disney's latest releases there were Death on the Nile and Encanto, both of which didn't do much. Like, what we've learned is that China just doesn't care. They're just, they're making their own stuff now, and they don't really need our box office. They've surpassed America as the biggest box office in the world.
So answer me this. Does America need China's box office? Like, that's where a lot of the numbers come from.
That's
right?
a very interesting goal. Like, I don't know if I would say that they need it, but I think that they, like, with these companies, I mean, a division of a big company can get axed if they're making money but not making enough money. Mm-hmm. And in a company where making as much money as possible is the end goal, it's not a bad thing. It's just the point of a corporation. Don't at me with any of that stuff. Like, they're going to try to get to as many markets as possible, but now they have to balance that with the messages they're trying to inlay with their movies, which is becoming more and more Americans or Western centric in things that we talk about here, whether we're talking LGBTQIA, stuff like that, are all themes that are very common in Western cinema, Western dialogue and discourse, but not so much in places like China or Pakistan or do
you think it'll ever get to the point? I mean, I know they edit out certain scenes that'll be offensive to Chinese markets, but do you think it's ever going to behoove an industry that does feel like selling in China is important to just not follow that narrative?
Well, that's what's very interesting is, like, I'm excited when Doctor Strange was coming out, or when all of these last movies are coming out, I was expecting them to at least make the cuts for China rather than, but they're not even making the cuts anymore. They're just leaving them out. They left it out of Egypt. They left it out of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and China. Like, they submitted it to China, but it never ended up.
They said that, like, often when they submit these films, they just never get an answer back. So it's technically not banned. It's just kind of
not accepted.
Yeah.
It's unbanned. No, that doesn't work.
Guilty.
It's unaccepted. No, that doesn't work either.
Those
are real words, not Ezra Miller words.
It says, we've got a long track record of success and a strong fan base for our brands and franchise in this market, he told Wall Street on a post-earnings conference call in response to the question. We'll continue to submit our films for release, and it's worth noting, I think, though, that at the time they were having some difficulty in getting our films in China. The Doctor Strange did extraordinarily well. What he's not mentioning is that they, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you before, but when they made the first Doctor Strange, it has a character called the Ancient One, which is famously a Tibetan character, which they turned into Tilda Swinton at the behest of China.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question is, if the same thing came up again, would they have done the same? If that character had been relevant, would have come around in this movie again? I think they would have cut that out. I don't think they would have cut out America Chavez and her character's arc, which has her parents. She has two moms in that movie, which they submitted. And if they're unwilling to make those changes, like they were, and like Qatar and Saudi Arabia said, look, if you cut these 12 seconds out, we'll take the movie. And they refused to do it. So to their credit, they stood by their, I guess, the ideals that they push here. That's fine, but they took the loss on the money. But it's still making a ton of money, and that's to their credit, that proves the juggernaut that this company is. But they've got a bunch of more movies coming up in this. So Eternals didn't come up. either, because Eternals was directed by Chloe Zhao, who is banned for speaking out against China.
Really?
Yes, because she's from. Same with Simu Liu, had negative stuff to say about China. So Shang-Chi and the Legend
These
of
like
the Thing.
expats.
Yeah,
then?
like I don't know. I think he immigrated to Canada, and she's from there, but she lives here now. But like her past words about China got that movie banned, and him same thing. So I don't know if they're just like if they did that on purpose. Like maybe the fact that they had two movies that got banned in a while. Remember we covered the fact that there was like an Epoch Times like post box there. Like I don't know if that was on purpose. I do have a hard time believing that it wasn't on purpose.
It was absolutely on purpose.
Given-
I can't pretend to know why they decided on that.
See,
but
it could be like a
Such a
nose
weird-
up fu to them. Like, look, we're gonna like they know it's not gonna get approved anyway, so they submit it and leave it in there, and then they know that if they ask for them to make the change, they're not gonna make the change, or they just didn't expect to hear back. But Disney has a bunch of stuff coming out, including Lightyear, which is the new Buzz Lightyear like origin story movie. I'm sure Hannah Claire will love that, given her love of sequels.
well, it's
and-
not really a sequel.
At
It's
least
trying to be its own
slightly
thing.
different. Yeah, it's an origin story.
Um,
I'm like almost more interested in origin stories than I have sequels, but again, the line is pretty thin.
So they've got that. They've got so Lightyear, which they said will include LGBTQ stuff, which means it won't get a release in China, I'm sure.
Lame.
Thor, Love and Thunder, and then what was the other ones? Hocus Pocus 2. No, that's Hocus Pocus 2's Disney Plus. Then we've got The Little Mermaid is coming out, and then Pinocchio. And Ant-Man, I feel like a bunch of these movies down the line, unless something major changes in the characters from what I know about them, they're probably going to be okay. But at this point, China doesn't need them because China has now the world's top movie market, and that's a big deal. So China is going to take over the Lake of Shenzhen, made like $1 billion just in China.
Something interesting to me on the Marvel side rather than Disney is that
Marvel is owned by Disney.
I mean just like Marvel
Yeah.
movies only.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they rely on the hype of doing cliffhangers at the end of their films and Easter eggs and like having a dedicated fan base that comes back to watch those movies over and over again. And since in China they have been banned or just not maybe soft banned so many times, they haven't been allowed to like get the hype for the next ones that they've needed. So even if they were allowed there, they wouldn't be as popular as they are in the West because they haven't had the chance to like build a fan base there.
I actually don't think it matters because Phase 4 has been so disjointed in plotting that I don't like. There's not really a lot of like congruity between the post credit scenes to what they're building up, so I don't really actually think it
I don't
matters.
know. A lot of Marvel super fans would argue with you about it, I'm sure.
I mean, a lot of it is like you have to like. I just don't care about Marvel movies. Like I watch,
neither do I.
I watch them, but it's more like out of like a perverse sense of like completionism. Like I need to watch it just to even just once. It's not like I'm ever gonna watch it again, but partially because headphones.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. Like part of it's like we do it for work, so that's important. In certain scenes, certain movies will have scenes that I really like, and I always appreciate good cinematography and good movie making when it happens, but I just don't really care the way that a lot of people seem to. And China just doesn't seem to need or want Western cinema, but it's not hurting Disney Plus, who just added 8 million subscribers over the second quarter. So second quarter is what, January to March? I
First
believe.
quarter is January to March. Second quarter is March. to end of May, I think.
Okay. So they just did a quarterly earnings call, right? And the stock is like down right now, but Disney Plus subscribers are up. And they make a big deal out of it. They're like 137 million subscribers. I'm like, yeah, Netflix has 221, but the difference is that Netflix costs like $16 and Disney Plus only costs $8. So
do you think it's cost alone, not the quality of the content they offer?
I think they're just, Disney is such a staple, and we take for granted the fact that a lot of normie people just don't know what's going on in the world.
I think that Disney Plus offers an array of content, so I think cost does factor into it, especially since Netflix is like about to raise it again or charge for password sharing.
But
like,
but
I think that Disney being able to bring in subscribers just on the fact that it's like, if you live in a house, if you're married and you have kids, right, and your kids could be a variety of ages, probably all of you will find something you want to watch on Disney Plus. Whereas like Netflix, people don't trust the same way they used to. I think that like in combination with costs, like it's not surging past Netflix yet, but I do think it's got an angle that people are going to find hard to resist.
Yep. So it says Disney is currently riding high, 8 million subscriber growth. It is interesting though, because Netflix is kind of, or Disney is kind of like, they added the Marvel shows, which were higher or more mature rated than that stuff, but also they do pay VOD. Like, so it's like you can get movies early and pay extra for it, and Netflix doesn't do that. So I don't know if that's maybe Netflix should have looked into doing PVOD stuff, but Disney has so much more of a name behind it that a Disney release that you pay extra for is a whole lot different than you're gonna trust
Netflix original series.
You'd be like,
I'm
you'd have
so
to,
excited that I'm gonna pay for it before it's out.
Absolutely not.
you'd be like, you have to pay me to watch this.
Yeah, they would have a hard time selling that. I'm thinking a little bit more about the trouble Disney's having getting movies shown in China, and I think it's worth noting that American and Western culture was kind of a commodity for a long time in China in a way that it's not anymore. And I do think it has to do with the divergence in Western values having to do with, you know, gender or LGBTQ issues, or just generally
Even just religion,
the values of like think of when like Western movies were a big thing. They sold like crazy in China. And part of it is because it was this idea of this like Americana tough man doing a thing, living a hard life, and like we don't see a ton of movies like that anymore. I think Chinese values are different enough from Western, but specifically American values, that like they are not attractive. They have lost their literal financial value. They are not selling.
Do you think that the tide is going to turn where maybe Western audiences will want to see more from China?
I think it's not just China. I think it's already turning, and I think about that when we talk about like K-pop bands that are so big.
Yeah.
Like the K-pop has a presence in America that like American pop stars are big, but it's not, they don't have the same phenomenon. Their culture around pop is completely controlled in Korea. And so I do think there are things that like Asia is producing that the West wants in lieu of its own products. So we are seeing like a different turn. I just don't know if it's always going to come from China, and that has to do more with like how restrictive their culture is.
Well, K-pop is also like, it's still pop music, right? That's still a kind of a univeusal value system as far as the type of music.
It has a lot of Americanized elements.
That's
as well.
That's what I mean. Like,
but with this really intense level that like I hate, like, not to stereotype, but like Asian cultures are sometimes known for, like, they aren't just like good dancers. They are like trained from the beginning. They are a product that's made and sold. It's industry. Like what we like think of, like, oh, when they assembled the Spice Girls, to an extreme level.
Yeah.
And I think that like we just don't behave that way in America, and in some ways that makes K-pop more interesting. I mean, K-pop stars, I'm not a huge, like, I can't really name that many.
Conformity and excellence is really important to them in that industry. And you've got to respect that, because like we kind of are like known for our like best mediocrity and celebrating absolutely nothing.
And like it is a coordinated effort. Like not only do they assemble these teams in a really specific way, but they also like coordinate what they're wearing to the outfit and who's doing what. And there are like values. Like, again, I can't even name any K-pop music. I could maybe name a band, but I do know that like if they're dating anyone, it is top secret information. Like,
so is America just better at branding our celebrities?
No, America sells its privacy in a weird way. Like K-pop is selling you a packaged image of like idealism and like excellence, and like they're so beautiful and they're so talented. And America is in a different direction, which you could argue is positive, where it's like celebrities are just like, oh, look at all their messy breakups, look at their messy divorce, this one's got a bunch of issues.
They're selling their dysfunction rather than like talent and excellence and ideal
and like
image.
People would argue
wow, that's
like
depressing. To think about.
But that's what we're doing. I mean, because we are so intent on making sure that our idols are people that cannot be better than us. I think
we do that. We just do it with, special forces in the It's just American military might
But
that we
like, there's a
export.
huge sentiment that's like anti-military among young Americans now. I don't really respect the military. It's something you'll hear more and more frequently.
That was
Even-
a joke, by the way. I was kidding.
Yeah.
but like, it is interesting that the things that we choose to like seek out about our celebrities are so different from what. It's hard to think of another example other than K-pop. I think Japanese pop stars
Even-
might have a similar industry.
Even
This
Taylor
is not weird.
Swift was known for her breakups like that because it was used as like look at what an artist she is to turn her breakups into
We
music.
search for relatability and also the worst parts of ourselves, I think, in celebrity culture. And in other countries, they are searching for the ideal aspects, like someone who embodies the ideal
Somebody to aspire to.
parts of their culture.
Yes, I think Mary's totally onto it. This is something that my dad talks a lot about. So my dad is from England. He's, a baby boomer, I'm pretty sure. And he talks about, not often, but the way we view the royal family today is very different from how he grew up viewing it. And part of that has to do with a lot of cultural shifts and a lot of changes that the royal family has taken in terms of how they present themselves. But part of it is like they were supposed to be like an elite class showcasing the like highest points of British culture and society. And that's just probably not true anymore. And so in some ways they are like not the royal family of my grandparents' generation. And some people find that great because it means, we're doing away with elitism and we're doing away with people who are out of touch from the average person. But the other part of that is like, where are we aspiring to? Like,
That's
who
really-
do we look to as someone who we like are like, yes, we hold you up as a role model in society.
That's really interesting because that is definitely like that's probably one of my most Americanized traits then because I am very much I hate the idea of elitism and I hate the idea of
We see elitism as this thing that means like exclusivity, whereas I think that we need to think of it in terms of like people who are working hard to hold themselves and those around them to high standards.
Like for me, the people that I do tend to gravitate towards are ones who are incredible in their field because they've put forth great work ethic. Like I said, we can crap on movie stars and movies and stuff all day, but when I see good movies that are made by talented directors, starring extremely gifted actors, whatever their beliefs are in the world, I find great value in that because of what it can mean for culture and what the art form does, how it inspires me. So it's like I am inspired by the best traits that they present forth, while hopefully being able to, like I said, separating art from artist, being able to kind of negate or ignore those less desirable traits only in the context that I want to be able to enjoy the art, not in the context that I'm dismissing their behavior.
I think in America, we feel most comfortable celebrating hard work as like a shared value. Like no
Yes.
matter where anyone comes from, we are willing to be like, but they work really hard. And that's something I admire. It becomes harder for us when we're saying like, this person is extremely strong in their faith. And I admire that because we have a more grayscale view of religion, or this person has this character trait. And I admire it because we are trying to walk this fine line of letting everyone be however they want to be,
Yeah.
while also not being totally sure at this moment in time what our shared ethics and values are.
Wow.
And I think that's the challenge to navigate going forward. And I think other cultures are noticing that this day and age in America where we were like, it's hard work, but it's also about family and it's about having like a high standard for yourself and pursuing that. Those are not really American central values right now, or at least as they're not depicted that way in media. And I think that's why other cultures are starting to be like, well, maybe we need to think about our own values and what are the things that we prioritize more.
So maybe in the future we start importing more values rather than it used to be that America was a net exporter of all things
Right,
culture.
we're
and-
becoming less important
Yes.
objectively.
I think that we could have our own strong values. I think that we need to be more direct about what we want, and we have to be okay with not liking everything. America is painfully, I mean, it's hard to make everyone happy, and I think America just has to give that up to a certain point.
Yep. That's a very interesting point because we do kind of have to. Like a lot of people will be under the notion of just like, you just have, it's fine. You're supposed to like all things that you're shown now. It's like, but it's okay to just not like it, but also not make a big deal about
Well,
it.
think of China being like, no, we are not going to show LGBTQ characters or content. Like, in America, we're like, that seems crazy. You can't do that. Like, people live all kinds of ways. But China is like, no, we reject that as part of our values. And their box office does not suffer for it.
No.
Like, that's not something that we would expect in America. And I wonder, it's hard not to wonder what things America could firmly say no to and actually realize that, like, the culture at large gets behind that.
That's such a big question. I don't know if there's an answer to that.
I mean,
I was trying to think of it like an innocuous one, like maybe violence, but no. People love horror movies. Maybe religion, but no. We have a strong sect of this country still that's very religious, but also a lot of people that aren't. There's very little in the terms of shared universal values here, and that may be to our detriment in the future. Maybe we could do with importing a little bit of idealism and growth from other countries rather than
I think we just need
exporting.
to bring it out of ourselves. I do not necessarily think that we need to import it. I think it's just something that, like, we need to rediscover. I think America
That's what
needs,
I meant, like
an
import the
ethical
concept.
renaissance.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.